Now, it never fails when you make a YouTube video that somebody finds the wrong thing to cling on to, and they miss the point of what you're trying to present. So the idea of taking cargo off of a ship, oh, well, you wouldn't do it like that, and what would make a hand tractor beam better, and torpedoes are bad because countermeasures are OP or all that. Are they really kind of thinking it through? What I'm saying is, there are multiple ways to skin this cat. I mean, I could wait outside the station and just shiv the guy as he's running back to his ship, and then perhaps use a cutting tool to get into their ship and just steal the entire ship. Maybe a hand tractor beam tool can only pick up one box at a time, maybe one or two. It doesn't matter because I'm able to stand in a cargo bay and just shovel that into my cargo bay rather than running out, picking it up and dragging it back. We've done that as an org back when JT was a thing. It sucks. That's why nobody does it. Going out and picking up boxes one at a time, but if you can scoop up a few or even just one at a time and just stand in the cargo bay and drop them, that's the advantage. That's why you do it. But picking apart the mechanics of how you would go about it, there's multiple ways in Star Citizen that you could do this. And that's one of the great things about Star Citizen, is it allows you that creativity to develop tactics and develop, different ideas as to how to go about doing things. What I'm trying to present is the idea, though, that, if you're going around in just a solo fighter and you're like, well, I'm a pirate, and it's just not really. You're just kind of a marauder. I mean, it takes time, it takes thought, it takes tactics and strategy. You have to come up with different ways to kind of go about things, and just kind of blowing people up with a light fighter it's really not going to pan out. But does that mean as a solo player that there aren't certain avenues open to you? And I kind of said in that video, not entirely. There are certain things that Star Citizen is bringing into place. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is, does that mean that solo gameplay in Star Citizen, if you are prepared, if you're thinking about it logically and you're sitting there and you're not just going like, well, I'm going to be a solo player in a Gladius and I'm going to take on the universe. But if you're thinking about it logically, is there still an avenue for it? And this is what we're going to explore, is the idea of how can solo play really work when you've kind of outlined all these different ideas and different strategies as to how to go about things, but it requires a team. So I'm going to ask you to think about a ship. Think about the Cutlass, right? We all like the Cutlass, or at least enjoy the Cutlass to a certain degree. The Cutlass has enjoyed a great deal of popularity, I would say, in my opinion, frankly, because it doesn't do anything amazingly, but it does everything just good enough, and it opens up a lot of doors for you. And that's what makes the Cutlass a really, that and its price make it a very attractive option within the community. Many of you own Cutlasses, correct? I would assume so, or have owned a Cutlass. So you're pretty familiar with it. Now, the long time Cutlass owners may remember this, but back in the olden days of Star Citizen, ye old days of Arena Commander, the Cutlass had a particular quirk that you may have forgotten about, which is that the guns in the turret were also slave to the pilot's control. That was part of how the ship worked. Now, since then, these two things have been separated, and they've been separated for a number of years now. But many of us remember it, and that's back in the day when we used to call the Cutlass the poor man's Super Hornet. Back when the Super Hornet was a dominant force in Arena Commander. Now, the game has certainly evolved a heck of a lot, but think into the future, something that Todd Pappy was talking about just recently. Now, it's not something that's on the immediate horizon, but it's something that I don't think is unreasonable to expect within a year, is the idea that we will finally be able to put NPCs in the turrets of our ships. Now, consider the Cutlass that you're flying today, now. Now, imagine having access to those 2 size 3s in the turret. Does that change the Cutlass for you in any way? Opens up a few doors, certainly kicks up the firepower a few notches too, doesn't it? Makes the Cutlass a much more attractive ship. And you have to remember that, when people go and they They try to shop around for what ship should I own, what ship works really good in this patch, and what ship works very good in that patch. It's really bad to think about it that way. What you have to think about is long term. What is this ship going to be once everything comes online? And that's, an idea that a lot of us try to present out there, is that you're not buying a ship for the immediate patch. You're buying a ship for what it's going to be once it's fully realized, and hopefully balancing that against what CIG hopefully is going to have online in the next little while. And the Cutlass is going to see a huge power jump because of that. Other ships as well. The Freelancer not so much, because its turrets are kind of bogus, but certainly the Connie, when the Corsair finally arrives, it's going to see some power gain from that. And those side turrets are still a bit of a big question mark, but it is what it is. But things like the Connie are certainly going to see a power magnification come from that. Things like the Vanguard are going to get a little bit more interesting with that turret. You can see how things are going to shift around. But when you think about a ship like the Cutlass, all of a sudden you've got a hand tractor beam tool, and lest we forget, the Cutlass also comes with a built-in tractor beam. Now you've got those open cargo bays that open from every place. You can go out there and you can start marauding with that ship. Maybe you might have to restrict yourself to Avenger Titans that are running cargo and things like that, but you can see how you could quickly blow somebody up with that ship now and steal that cargo. You just have to pick your targets. Now, back in 2014, I believe it was the 2014 anniversary sale. It was the first time we saw the Javelin. CIG sold something else at that sale that for some people generated a huge amount of buzz, and other people just went like, well, whatever, why would I buy it? It was the $20 Star Citizen only game package, and you could just, I think they sold them in limited amounts, but they were just going like hotcakes. They were just gone, because some players may not be aware of this, but if you have a game package on your Star Citizen account, let's say for me it's the Caterpillar is my core game package. Everything that I've earned on this account is somehow linked or attached to that ship if I ever get rid of it or whatnot. Additional game packages can be converted into supposedly high quality NPCs that will, that can man your ships, either as a wingman or as, operating a cruise station within your ship. So when these things came up for sale, and a lot of us knew about this, we just decimated the sale. We're like, yes, more. Yep, perfect. There are some people who have one or two. I have a few. I'll admit that much. But let's just say on just about any turreted ship that I own or operate, I can pretty much guarantee you that every turret is going to be manned at all times. And I don't need to wait for other players to show up and do that. So when you think about that, that's for a single player, that's an enormous force multiplier. That gives you a certain added bonus that other players are simply not, don't have access to. It's because we knew what was coming, and we said, oh, here's an opportunity to take advantage of that, and we seized that opportunity as soon as it came up. Let's say, you don't own a Cutlass. Let's say you're one of those OG backers who bought into the Constellation. You're like, oh yeah, the Constellation, that's my ship. Chris says it's the Millennium Falcon of Star Citizen. Well, arguably the Corsair is more that now. Possibly also the MSR, but let's say you still own that old Constellation. You love that ship. But lately the Connie is kind of, it's not doing all that well. And you're just a single player. Maybe you don't want to join an org. You don't want to be overcomplicated. You don't want to log in and have 50 people message you every time you log in. But you still want to enjoy your Constellation. You think about what I showed you guys with the Caterpillar versus the Gladius. Now think about it in the Constellation, but think about those turrets being manned. Think about there being a pilot in that snub fighter that you can deploy. Think about how interesting that dogfight becomes in a Connie. As a single player, if you've kind of made the right moves and you thought about it, a ship like the Connie could still be a really great ship. Crew members may not, NPC crew members may never be the best at it, but certainly if, having someone there to actively manage your shields at a semi-competent level, or having someone there to actively manage your energy levels at a semi-competent level, could be extremely beneficial in that combat scenario. Whereas as a fighter pilot, you've got to manage everything by yourself. And I think that once these things come online, that's when you're going to see it's in the eyes of many, many players who are still kind of holding on to their fighters. That's when you're going to see like, oh, I'm just going to throw an NPC in that fighter. I don't even care about it anymore, because they're going to start to realize the potential, even if it's somewhat mediocre when it's controlled by NPCs, of the bigger ships. And that's where you're going to see fighters really kind of get roasted. And they're just going to end up being like, oh yeah, that's that thing that I let, an NPC fly. He'll just cover me with it, but if he dies, he dies. I don't care. I've got LTI on it, and I'll just hire another NPC. No big deal. Really stop and think about it for a second, because we are on the cusp of a huge leap in Star Citizen. This is something that they're talking about. This is something that, there's still a few mechanics that they have to tie together, but NPC occupied turrets is something that already exists in Star Citizen, and it has existed for a while. It's just we need we need all the little connections to be made to allow us to enable that. But if you're flying around in your Caterpillar right now, and let's say you're going from Bezdek to Lorville or whatever trade run you're on, realize that very, very soon it's going to go from just you occupying that ship to you and your crew, whether that's live or NPC. You're going to have people always manning those turrets, and it's going to turn that fairly sedate Caterpillar into something more like this. And you've probably been waiting for that for a long, long time, but this is something that is very close to being realized. Now, on far larger ships, more complicated ships that might require a lot more things to do, something like a Reclaimer, something like an Idris or a Javelin, it could be a lot more difficult. But with a lot of these medium ships where you're just kind of asking them to maybe manage my shields, maybe manage my energy, and maybe manage my turrets, that's not too tall of an order for what's currently possible in Star Citizen. So the idea of single player in Star Citizen isn't entirely unreasonable or dead. You just got to make sure that you've kind of set yourself up in the right way.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.